Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Benefits and Insurance Committee meeting for the April 28th meeting. Ms. Corbin, if you would please call the roll.
Rhonda Allen. Dr. Andrea Anthony. Here. Doug Bodery. Here. Amber Brown. Here. Shay Crowell. Holly Deering. Here. Brian Gaither. Here. Mary Hickerson. Here. Lois Miller. Here. Alan McAdoo. Jeff Phillips.
Here.
Shantae Sherrill. Here. Steve Spence. Here. Eric Tutobeni.
Here. Oh, we have a quorum. Thank you, Ms. Corbin, for calling the roll. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes, members. I'll accept a motion for approval. Have a motion to approve the minutes as mailed. Is there a second? Got a second? All those in favor, acceptance of the minutes, signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next, item number 2, financials. Mr. Elam, you recognize.
Thank you, Chairman Ketron. The 264 fund for the month of March 2022, revenue was $9,113,795. Expenditures was $6,176,671. Revenue less expenditures was a positive $2,937,123. For a total for the calendar year, you have $24,877,337 in revenue. Expenditures, $20,274,838 with a positive $4,602,499. And the fiscal year, you have a total in revenue $62,055,872, and expenditures you have $63,759,744 for a negative $1,703,873. The 266 report for the month of March, you have workers' comp, $5,443.63. OJI, you have $110,792.80 for a total of $116,236.43. Year to date, you have $50,000 for workers' comp. You have $50,795.62. OJI, you have $403,236.18. And for the fiscal year, you have $454,031.80. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any questions from Mr. Elam on those reports? Mary?
I have a question on the OJI for this month, 110,000 plus. That was a huge increase. Was that one incident, or is that over the? I know your numbers are a little different from what we'll hear from Ms. Thompson in a little bit, being only 12 people, give or take, for that month. So where did our 110?
I figured somebody would ask. That is our third-party administrator had changed their billing vendor. So if you look at the prior month, you'll see it was $8,000, and then here you have 110, and that was just changing over the vendor and the billing part of it.
Other questions? No other questions from the members? All right. Is there a motion? Is there a motion to accept the report? Motion for approval. Second, Steve. Any further discussion, questions? Seeing none, if you would, please call the roll. I'm sorry? Yeah, go ahead and call the roll. That's okay.
Rhonda Allen. Dr. Andrea Anthony. Doug Bodery. Amber Brown. Shay Crowell. Holly Deering. Brian Gaither. Mary Hickerson. Lois Miller. Alan McAdoo. Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Shante Sherrill. Steve Spence. Eric Tutobeni.
Yes.
All in favor.
Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Corbin. Next, we have item number 3, work comp and OJI statistics. Ms. Thompson. Hello. Doing well, thank you. You're recognized.
With 13 restricted days, 4 lost days, and 17 other recordables. On the next page are, if you compare our year-to-date this year of 45 to last year at 49, and in 2020 of 47 claims year-to-date. On the next page is our incurred dollars. So for 2022, we're looking at $160,000. 2021 was $190,000 for this same time last year, and 2020 was $128,000. For the breakdown of Board of Ed and County General, there was 9 incidences in March in the Board of Ed, 3 in County General, 2 of those at the Sheriff, and 1 at Fire and Rescue. And that concludes my report.
Any questions? Mr.
Move to
Phillips.
approve the report.
Motion for approval on the report. Is there a second? Got a second over here. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next, we have wellness update. Ms. Lovett, our well-being coordinator. Are you well today? I am. All right, thank you. I'm doing well.
Okay, so for our incentives this month, we are at 1,423 compared to last year at this time we were at 1,662. We have our first mobile mammogram bus scheduled for May at Blackman Elementary. We are currently in our second quarter wellness challenge, stepping into spring, which is a walking wellness challenge for 4 weeks with a celebration scheduled for May 14th at Barfield Park. And that concludes my report.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. Next, we have our MedPoint report, Ms. O'Neill. Hi there.
All right, if you'll go to page 2, you'll see that we had 639 visits in March. Of that, 516 were unique members. On page 3, we have seen 14,809 visits from September of 2020 through March of 2022, and 4,434 unique members. In calendar year 2022, New Salem has seen 806, Stewart's Creek 492, Walter Hill 448, for 1,746 visits so far in 2022. In our visit summary by member type, we saw 111 children, 465 employees, and 63 spouses. And in our visit type summary, for appointment type, we saw 74 annual visits, 409 established patient visits, 14 dietitian visits, 45 new patients, 48 nurse visits, 7 telehealth phone visits, and 41 virtual visits with video and telephone components. We had 101 members that had more than one visit in the month of March. 1 member had 6 visits, 1 member had 5 visits, 2 members had 4 visits, and 97 members had 2 to 3 visits. Of the mutual visits, they were generally a combination of well care and acute care, or multiple acute care visits for an issue that needed specific monitoring, or multiple different types of acute issues. It was nice not to see a bulk of COVID in those ones this month. In our visit summary by day on page 6, March had 27 available scheduling days, and Thursday was the busiest day for the month of March. On page 7, on our in-person versus virtual appointments, we had New Salem saw 11 virtual visits, Stewart's Creek 21, and Walter Hill 16, for a total of 48 virtual visits in the month of March, and Walter Hill had the highest average virtual visit utilization. Of that, this month, 87.5% were done because of convenience and choice, and only 12.5% of those were done for sick visits. Continuing with our virtual visit appointments, for our total virtual visit appointments, we've had 2,598 virtual visits since we opened. That's about 17.5% of our total visits have been done virtually. On page 9, on our referral summary, we had 101 total referrals in the month of March, 46 of those coming from New Salem, 34 Stewart's Creek, and 21 at Walter Hill. Our dietitian was our highest utilized referral source at 17, behavioral health secondly at 14, then gastroenterology at 12, physical therapy, otolaryngology at 7. For both of those, orthopedic surgery, neurology, neurosurgery, and endocrinology were next with 6 each, then urology, and finally with sleep medicine at 3. In our financials for the month of March, we had 516 total unique members, a total operating cost of $200,109.56, a total employee count of 6,273 for a PEPM of $32. In our population health analytics, the encounter for general adult medical exam, which is that annual wellness exam, and essential hypertension were the top 2 diagnoses for the month of March, with that annual wellness exam being 17.6%, while hypertension was at 9.72%. Then it was followed by anxiety disorder, then acute chronic sinusitis or pharyngitis, type 2 diabetes with or without complications, hypothyroidism, acute upper respiratory infection, otitis media, allergic rhinitis, and abdominal pain, rounding out those diagnosis codes for the month of March. On page 14, with our visit demographic summary, in March, 71.45% of the members seen were female, and female age range 50 to 59, and male age range 40 to 49 were the highest populations seen. But again, we did still have a really good mixture of ages for the month of March, with 59 people in the age of 10 to 19, 62 and 20 to 29, 77 and 30 to 39. But we did have 170 in the age of 40 to 49 and 174 in the age of 50 to 59. But still, again, 68 in the 60 to 69, 15 in the 70 to 79, and still 2 in the 80 to 89 age range. On our BMI summary on page 15, in March, the female highest percent of BMI was in the obese category, and male, the highest percent of BMI was in the overweight category, but again, still had a pretty good spread of ranges between the normal range all the way up to obese class 3. And And then we completed in the first quarter, and we now have the information back on our New Year, New You 2022 challenge metrics. So it's going to go over that just a little bit. We did a 6-week challenge aimed to help participants achieve their health goals for 2022. We focused on new health-related topics each week. Topics included goal setting, water intake, quick and nutritious meal ideas, mental health, clearing clutter, and healthy snacks. Participants also had a daily challenge of getting 30 minutes of exercise. And then we did weekly prize drawings for all the participants, which our Cigna reps really helped with a lot of this, with the planning and the prizes and getting information out. It's been a good partnership there. We had 230 people sign up. Of that, 119, or 52%, completed the full challenge at 63 different places of work. Before the challenge, we did a survey, and we had 186 responses. After the challenge, we sent out the same survey to see changes. We only got 62 responses after, so I'm going to give you the results on that, but we're hoping that's indicative of the total population. Unfortunately, at the end of challenges, people are not as incentivized to respond, because there's no prizes now, there's no enrollment now, but we did still get some responses there. So we asked how often they eat a well-balanced diet before the challenge, and about 38% said 3 to 4 days a week, about 35% said 5 to 6 days a week, and about 21.5% said 1 to 2 days a week, and then they kind of rounded off with 0 days and whatnot. After the challenge, 58.1% had raised up to 5 to 6 days a week, and 29% up to 3 to 4 days a week. So we saw some improvement there. Before the challenge, we asked if they had healthy go-to recipes, because part of the reason that people don't eat well is time constraints and work constraints and just being tired at the end of the day when you're busy working families. So before the challenge, 37% said no, they didn't have healthy go-to recipes. But after the challenge, only 19.4% said no, 80.8% said that they now had healthy go-to recipes to go to. Before the challenge, of course, we asked how many got 30 minutes or more of exercise per day. 32% approximately said 1 to 2 days a week, 29% said 3 to 4 days a week, 14.5%, 5 to 6 days a week, 16.7% said 0 days a week, and 7.5% said 7 days a week. After the challenge, 45.2% said they were up to 5 to 6 days a week, 24.2% 3 to 4 days a week, 24.2% said 7 days a week, and just a very, very small percentage said 1 to 2 days a week, and nobody responded with 0 at that point. So that was nice. We asked how much water they drink every day before the challenge. 29.6% said 49 to 72 ounces a day. 36% said 25 to 48 ounces a day. 16.7% said 0 to 24 ounces per day. And 12.9% said 73 to 96 ounces a day. After the challenge, we had gone up to 35.5%. We're doing 49 to 72 ounces per day. 24.2%, we're doing 73 to 96 ounces per day. 14.5%, we're up to 25 to 48 ounces a day. We even had some that had gotten up above 121 ounces a day. And then a very small percentage were still in that 0 to 24 ounces per day. So we saw definite improvement there as well. This, I think, was our largest improvement that we saw with responses. So before the challenge, we asked if anyone had self-scheduled times during the week for their mental health. And 53.2% said no. After the challenge, only 12.9% said no. So 87.1% now had regularly scheduled mental health time. And just some of the participant feedback, we grabbed some of the comments, and these were what those comments were. I appreciated the opportunity to be a part of this challenge. It helped me to refocus and to be intentional when making healthy lifestyle choices. I understand that healthy living isn't a one-way solution, but it includes many steps from eating healthier food, exercising, drinking more water, getting the proper amount of sleep. This challenge has kept me accountable to follow through on the commitment that I made to myself. Thank you. I was so excited to see a health challenge that was not focused on weight loss only. I'm becoming very discouraged with the scale and need to focus on other habits. Thank you for this change in thinking. It was good to help me actually focus on the different parts of getting healthier. It's easy to think about working out and eating better, but focusing on specific parts like mental health was really good. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. Are there any questions before she leaves? Seeing none. Thank you so much. Good report. Next, members, we have Mr. David Patterson. He is our broker with Assured Partners. He's going to come up and kind of brief us on our property and casualty insurance. Of course, you know it's up for renewal. The markets are volatile, to say the least, at this point in time. David, if you will, kind of bring us up to date where we are, what you're looking at, what proposals you're making. Talk about cyber. You can brief us on that. Many of you saw late yesterday afternoon, 4 o'clock, came across Channel 4 that Austin Peay State University had been hit with a cyber attack. They were, I think it went out, Austin Peay issued a tweet telling all students to please take down their laptops, computers, anything else that was connected to them. Because if they were connected to the mainframe that was attacked for ransomware, then they happened to still have that line open, went to their dad, and that would just keep going. You know, that's the scary part. It gives you cold chills of what is happening in the cyber world today. And David will brief us on our challenges on acquiring cyber liability insurance. David, you take it from the top and then get into the cyber as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'll save the best for last.
Yes, sir.
So on the first page of your slide, Ed, challenged me with doing a deep dive on the casualty side of the property and casualty program. So we went to 11 insurance companies, and you can see the results of that. So far, we have 4 quotes, and I do anticipate one more. They're still asking questions. That's a good sign. But you can kind of see the list. We went to all the players. We didn't really leave any stones unturned. Most declined for one reason or another. On the next page is
Dave, just a minute. Sure. Because I think sometimes in the general public, you're thinking there's all these insurance companies, and you should be able to get a lot of quotes. So could you just give a brief explanation of why some of these declined to quote? And it's not because of the entire part of the county, but it's just sections of the county.
Right. Each carrier has their own appetite, and yeah, there are literally, tens of thousands of insurance companies out there, but a handful will work on a public entity, and even a smaller percentage will work on a school system. So some of the carriers you can see, like 2 Travelers and Chubb, I think were the 2 that declined simply because, the school system and the county are combined, and they don't like schools. So you can see how that kind of plays out. But, the nationwides of the world would not write Rutherford County, period.
So between school liabilities, what's happening in our school systems across the country is how they determine their appetite. And then, of course, the second type of coverage besides the cyber is law enforcement liability.
Yeah, the law enforcement liability is another one that carriers don't like, not necessarily just the county, but as with schools, generally, they don't like it. Seen a lot of claims and stuff, and Rutherford County's had a claim or 2 over the years in the law enforcement liability segment. So some carriers will write schools, some carriers will write, law enforcement liability, and some don't want any of it, if that makes sense. On the next page is the property renewal. Last year, you may recall, we moved everything to Liberty Mutual. They gave us a very attractive option. I think we'll probably stay with Liberty Mutual. I do have Travelers working on it this year as well. Of note, I don't have that renewal yet, so I don't have the pricing. I don't anticipate any issues with coverage. Shouldn't be any changes in terms, conditions, and all that stuff. But of note, we have a significantly higher TIV. Last year, we were $1.5 billion or so in change, and this year we're going to be, I don't know, close to 2. Yeah, almost 1.9. I didn't do the math, but about 1.9 billion in property value in the county, which is huge. I mean, there are literally 3 carriers off the top of my head that can do that whole thing. Travelers, Allianz, and Liberty Mutual are those 3. And then from there, we would start piecing together a quota share program, not to get in the weeds, but where everybody kind of takes, 50 million here and 100 million there, and we kind of put together a program. It's not the ideal way to do it. So I'll have more on the property probably in the next week, 2 at the most. On the casualty side, which is 2 pages, I do have the Ambridge, used to be called Brit program renewal. Terms and conditions exactly the same. Self-insured retention is exactly the same. Premium is up about 17%. 5 to 6% of that is in exposure increases, just like with the higher property values. We have more payroll, we have more vehicles, the county's bigger. So your exposure increases amount to probably roughly 5 to 6% of that 70% increase, and the rest is just rate increase. I do have one other quote in from Berkeley Public Risk. It's not particularly attractive. The premium is competitive, but the self-insured retentions, the amount that the county retains on any claim, is $700,000. Currently, with the Ambridge program, it's only $350,000. So by changing, we're taking significantly more risk on any given claim. So I'm not sure the numbers work real well on that. The column that I have to the far right, which is still grayed out because I don't have that quote, I do think Princeton's going to quote. I think it's going to be very competitive premium-wise. I anticipate their self-insured retention being $500,000. So from $350 to $500, we're taking about $150,000 risk on a claim. But I think the premium savings may justify that if it comes together the way I hope.
Yes, Mary?
Before we move on and get too far into the other items, okay, I handle bidding and things. I have a road board that does this, and we have deadlines. So is there not a deadline to get these numbers in on these quote? I mean, I realize we're having a hard time, but is there not a deadline?
There is a deadline. That deadline is June 30th, right? I mean, literally, that deadline is June 30th. In a perfect world, I would love to be able to present the numbers to you guys today. And if we were just renewing with, probably Liberty Mutual and Ambridge and not really looking at getting other quotes, probably could have pushed Liberty and gotten that. I thought I would have it, actually. I'll probably have it in my inbox this afternoon, right? Because I was like, I got to have this. But when I go to market to try to get other quotes, I mean, everybody's insurance renews 7/1, not just Rutherford County. The entire country, everybody renews 7/1 in the public entity space. So the underwriters are really super busy. So it's hard to get it. To answer your question is, it's kind of hard to get it done, like by the end of April. I mean, it's hard.
Okay, so if the deadline is June 30th and we need something in place on 7/1, how can we make a choice if our last meeting is a date in June? It's going to be before the 30th. How can we make a decision to hit all of the committees and full commission for a 7/1 date?
So to follow up on that, I'll have all this together with everything except for saving the best for last, cyber liability. I'll have this done certainly before the next meeting, the next insurance committee meeting. I mean, I'll probably have it done in the next week or 2. Just trying to get it done. I know Ed pushed me hard to get it done for this meeting. I'm like, I'm trying. Cyber liability, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Oof, that's a whole different animal.
And David, looking at the casualty, you could give a quote. I mean, we could go with Britt,
Oh, absolutely, they're ready to go.
what we have now.
Yeah, they're ready to go, but not sure that's the flavor of the day, though.
And the committee could vote to accept that today.
Yes.
But what we're really
Yes.
working hard on is trying to get
Get an
additional
alternative.
quotes. See if there's a better alternative out there. And we have given the budget to Lisa.
Well, in cases
Based
like
on
that,
this.
and if it's pushed, we said, we'll come back in and convene, commission will, we set the final tax rate the morning of the 27th. And if you're still working on the 26th, and you come in with something cheaper, we'll take it before the full commission.
Right.
You know, so,
And
insurance committee, the committees would not have an opportunity, but if it comes in less, I'm sure the county commission would go, yeah, we're going with it, full commission, they have the authority and power.
Wanted to say, working in the insurance world, any company that wants to do business with Rutherford County would submit a quote in due time, plenty of time. Anyone who would wait to the last minute doesn't really want to do business, or they're a company we shouldn't be doing business with.
That's
Common sense for the business world.
That's true, and if you'll recall, last year, the Liberty Mutual on the property, we went through a couple of meetings, and at the almost the last minute, it wasn't the last minute, but it felt like the last minute, that came through, yeah.
I would question a lower quote on the last day. I would just question it.
Oh, yeah,
Really.
no, it won't, yeah, it won't be June 30th when we're convening an emergency meeting to talk about this stuff. That won't happen. But trying to get it done by the end of April is, you know, we're, in my world, we're a long way from 7/1. I understand your world, it works differently, I get that, but.
So that's 2 months before our deadline, so that's reasonable. Comes in after that, just, sorry.
Right, I mean, unless it's just like, guys, we got to talk about this, this is really something, but that doesn't happen that often, yeah.
And go a little bit further with that. We could renew this. We would have insurance.
It's ready to go, yeah.
It's ready to go with what we have. We're just waiting on a couple of others to give us see if they got a better price for
And
us.
it's in line with what we anticipated from a pricing standpoint. I mean, it's right there. So-
What we budget, the number we gave Lisa to budget, it's in line with that
Correct.
for the county
So, I mean,
commission.
if we wanted to just say, okay, let's just cut it off right here and let's just renew with Ambridge, we can do that today. So I said I was going to save the best to last, cyber liability, but this is probably going to be the toughest one, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. Cyber liability, as Mayor Ketcher just indicated, is completely off the rails in my industry. Ransomware claims are happening every day. Carriers are not releasing quotes, 30 days before renewal. So I really think that on the cyber liability, so the next meeting would be, this may actually go to the budget committee, I guess. Maybe unless we want to convene. I don't know that I'll have this done by the next insurance committee meeting.
Next meeting's May 26th.
Because the renewal is July 1, maybe I can get it by the end of May. It probably is going to be the 1st of June. They're just not releasing quotes, period.
So, David, that brings up a good question, and my question would be to Lisa. He's going to talk about the dental and some of the other smaller claims that we have, you have numbers on today that we can discuss. From a budgeting standpoint, Lisa, would you prefer that we wait and hold all of them? Or could we go ahead and vote on the ones that we know that we have numbers on and pass that on to budget committee? Are you okay with that? So this committee could actually voice their opinion, vote on it, like on the malpractice for the dentist, the dental liability. We can go ahead and send that on to you, and you can plug that in as a firm number. That's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So the cyber liability, Ed asked me, right now we have $1 million limit, which is probably not enough. Tell me how big the claim's going to be. I'll tell you how much insurance to buy, but probably $1 million's not enough. So we're going to look at $2 and $3 million options this year. It'll be a business decision how much money we want to spend on cyber liability. I anticipate the $1 million option going up easily 30% in premium. So we'll just have to look at that as it comes along, and hopefully I'll have that by the next committee meeting, but I don't know. I'm not going to promise that. Everything else I'll promise. I'm not going to promise this one. Questions about cyber?
Lois?
There is such a huge increase in cyber claims. I assume that the insurance companies have given out guidelines of what they would like to see from an internal protection standpoint. Where are we on satisfying those guidelines?
They have issued those guidelines to us. They want, I think in talking with our IT director, Mr. York, all the questions that were asked, they want verification, authentication, double. You know, once you put in your password, they want it the second time, all those things before they'll even issue a quote. Right, David?
Correct. I mean, so to Lois's point, it's not so much the guidelines as if you're not doing this, we're not even going to give you a quote. Like multi-factor authentication is the technical term for what Mayor Ketcherin's talking about. You know, when you put your password in, then you got to go to your phone and say, yes, it's me. That's multi-factor authentication.
I know that's another step, and the employees
It's
don't
critical,
like
though.
it, but it is the world that we're living in.
If we don't do that, we don't have cyber insurance, and that's period. Last year, we didn't have it. This year we do, and Cowbell, the carrier we're with now, was the only one that would give us a quote. You might recall this conversation, without multi-factor authentication. This year, nobody will do it. So it's not optional. I mean, we have to do these things. Been working, we've had, what, 3 or 4 meetings with Cody in IT, working.
Yes, and we also met with Steve Solomon, Board of Education, Sheriff's Department, and other people that, own their own servers, so that ties into the county. It's not just Rutherford County's IT department.
Right, one of the challenges the county faces is there's really 4 separate systems. School board has a system, county general has a system, property assessor.
Sheriff's Department, I think Register of Deeds.
Yeah.
But
So
it's
there's-
one policy to cover them
But
all.
one policy covers all of it, so we have to get with all 4 of them, make sure they're all doing that, the basic security things, so it's a little bit.
We had that meeting last week, and I think we'd all been operating in kind of IT departments of different departments of schools, sheriff, Rutherford County, and everybody been in their own silos. So they really liked that meeting of them all working together to protect our county's assets. So that was good.
On one hand, it's harder to kind of make sure everybody's doing the right stuff. On the other hand, if one aspect has a breach, the whole county's not down. Like if the sheriff's department has a breach, then county general's not impacted by that because they're separate. So it's good and bad that they're separate systems. That kind of answer your question?
Well, and to go a little bit further, these companies are requiring more to be done, and I know you mentioned the multi-factor authentication, but they're also looking at training, and then what are we doing, like maybe some type of phishing to where you're trying to get some, to be able to teach people. You're doing some phishing with your employees to see if they click on something that's the most common, that where you have cyber attacks, so you're trying to prevent your employee, you're trying to teach your employees not to do it. But this is one of the things that we're beginning, their requirements are beginning to ramp up a little bit more. And what I will say is in our conversations, just to go a little bit further, because Cody's not here, and I don't want to, put words in his mouth, but the idea is to try to make sure our system is secure enough and that we have the tools and the equipment in place to prevent this, not try to do it to where if we have an attack, we can just go to our cyber liability insurance. In all reality, if we have an attack, it's, and a severe attack, it's going to be more than $1 million. So you're trying to protect more than just $1 million. You're trying to protect the entire system, and that's part of what Cody is, and that's part of what the meeting was about. What can we do to prevent the attack, not just bring ourselves up to the standards of what cyber liability insurance companies want from us.
And schools and government entities are number 1 and 2 on the list, and it's interchangeable as far as targets. I mean, you guys have a huge bullseye on you. You may not know that, but you do. Insurance companies know it, which is why there's not very many insurance companies.
We're
that
we're
really-
aware, you don't need to broadcast it to
Yeah, sorry,
everybody.
sorry. Public television. Well, but you're doing all the right stuff. I mean, you really are. We're doing all the right stuff, and it's a good thing. Next slide. Dental insurance. So we kind of took a break in the health department with dental services, but now they're back up and running. I think as of 4/1, Ed, was it 4/1?
I think so.
4/1. So we put the dental insurance in place, same carrier, same rate. This policy is actually a 15-month policy. So we started at 4/1, and it's going to expire 7/1/23. So we get it on a concurrent date, so we can talk about it one time. We need to do the same thing with the next page, which is the firefighters, volunteer firefighters, and actually the career firefighters as well have this coverage. So the firefighters coverage, this is kind of like an occupational accident kind of benefit for the volunteer firefighters and the professional firefighters as well. It renews 9/1, so we're way out on a number on that. We should probably try to get that moved to 7/1 as well. I'll do that this year. And then the state requires us to maintain a self-insured bond in the amount of $500,000 for legacy work comp claims. Until all those claims are closed out, we're going to have to maintain this. That premium's $5,000. It has been and will be $5,000 until we get to get rid of it. And then the last slide is how you guys pay me. That's pretty much all the updates on the insurance program.
So members, instead of taking each one of them, what I'd like to do of these last four that we just discussed, the dental professional, the volunteer firefighters, accident, self-insured work comp bond, and the broker fee. Lisa, if it's okay with you, we take all four of those together in one motion. We can go ahead and vote on that, send it on, it'll go to budget, and you'll be assured of those numbers, okay? Is there a motion to accept the last four premiums that we discussed, or three premiums and the broker fee? Have a motion from Lois. And a second, Commissioner Phillips. For acceptance. Any further questions?
I have a question.
Mary?
What would we need to do to get the firefighter renewal either moved up to 7/1 of '22 or projected out enough that it hits the next 7/1, or shorten it to where it would end 6/30/23 for a 7/1/20?
I can do that. So on this September 1 renewal, if I can talk them into going to 7/1/24 and locking those rates in, it's a long time. I don't know if they'll do it. Either that or I'll go short to 7/1/23.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do
All right.
that.
I do think it's a good thing to have everything,
Totally.
all 9/1, 7/1, 1/1. It would just be easier.
And 7/1 makes the most sense.
Okay.
Any further questions? Eric?
That is about on the automated level, like software, like have all of that in place too, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, I'm not an IT guy, so I can't really speak to the intricacies of how that all works. Cody could definitely do that. But it's 99.999% of the claims are user error claims, right? Because the bad guys don't have to be smart, they have to be tricky. All you have to do is click a link, and it's game over, literally.
There's a software guardian that could stop.
I know, I wish there were. To my knowledge, I don't know of anything that can keep us from clicking a link on an email that looks like it's coming from the mayor. I mean, it looks like it's coming from the mayor.
Valuable software.
It would be. I wish I was smart enough to figure that out. I'd make bazillion dollars. I'd be richer than Zuckerberg right now.
Surprised McAfee or Avast or those types of companies haven't figured out.
We haven't figured out how to, control human behavior or cows for that matter.
Well, I think they might have for individual subscribers, but for multi,
Masses, it's
for the,
just so, it's,
you know, for
it's
something
it's
as large
impossible.
as
But to Ed's point a moment
county
ago, the
government,
training,
schools.
you know, never, ever, ever click on a link. Just don't do it, period.
Okay, any further questions on the 4 premiums and the broker fee? Let's call the roll. Call the roll, Ms. Corbin.
Rhonda Allen.
Aye.
Dr. Andrea Anthony. Doug Bodery. Amber Brown. Shay Crowell. Holly Deering. Ryan Gaither. Mary Hickerson.
Yes.
Lois Miller. Jeff Phillips. Shantae Sherrill. Steve Spence. Eric Tutobeni.
And the motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, David. Work hard. Get us good rates. Next, members, we have Ms. South, from the state of Tennessee, a Q&A. How are you today? Doing well, thank you.
Thanks for having us. I think
Sure.
everyone, most everyone I've met, I'm Jessica Southern, I'm the Outreach Director, and this is Judy. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Judy Carmen. I'm an Education Outreach Specialist under Jessica.
And so we're here to answer any questions you may have outstanding about the state group health insurance plan, and then also talk through some retirement pieces. It's a little different than the local government plan is a little different than the local education plan, so we'll talk through some of that and answer any questions you guys might have. However, if it's okay with you guys, I know on the agenda it's listed with retirement after the Q&A portion, but if we can swap those.
Yeah, so Jessica, if we could, Ed, let's bring everybody up to date from the last meeting, our members, and then let them get into their Q&A. So I believe, Mr. Bodery and Dr. Anthony, it's a foregone conclusion, the school board has elected to go with the state plan, so they'll be breaking away, right? Am I correct? So now that leaves county general, and we can't follow them. We can go to the state if we choose to, or we can stay on our own plan, which will skew the numbers somewhat because the population of where you derive your rates are based on the numbers that you have. So that population will be going to the state. But more concerning is our pre and post retirement, where we have a lot of questions. So that's why I believe we were asked to come today and talk about that. Okay, so we'll let you continue.
All right. So if it's okay, we're going to kind of swap the order because we do have our retirement manager dialed in online just in case there's any thing specific that we can't speak to as far as retirement is concerned. But I will say this, when it comes to retirement for the local gov side, you have the option to either opt in, opt out, or a limited option for retiree coverage. So it's totally up to the agency to decide whether or not you're going to offer coverage to your pre-65 retirees, and that's up to the agency. So you'll have that option if you decide to come onto the state plan. You can cover your active only, or you'll have the option to either opt in to cover your already retired pre-65 that meet the eligibility requirements, or you can opt out and completely do something else, offer a completely different plan if you so choose. But with that said, what questions do you guys have about retirement? We'll go through that first, and then we can kind of save towards the end about general questions that may be outstanding.
Well, Jessica, for clarification, because the insurance committee handles the post-65s and the pre-65s, so can you kind of tell a little bit of the difference with the local ed agencies where now that the schools have decided to go to the state, what will happen with their pre-65s?
For the local education?
Yes.
So it's different. So the local ed, the BOE decided to bring on their active and pre-65. They don't get that option like the local gov plan does. It's separate. So the BOE will now have their active and pre-65 on the state plan. And then the post-65, I believe you guys are going with a Medicare Advantage plan for all post-65 employees.
Well, they'd have the option for that or go to the state plan.
The Tennessee plan. Right. It's different than the active and the pre-65 coverage plan.
What questions, Mary?
Okay, I have a question for retirees. And before I can think past what's fixing to come, we need to settle on what happens for who is already retired, which will be anybody through 12/31/2022. So I need to know, and no disrespect, but right now, we got to think about us, not BOE, okay? So I need to know what happens with our current pre-65 and our current post-65 retirees that are now a total of 119, 109, or 103. I need to know what happens to those people. And then are we going to talk about what happens to anybody after 1/1/2023? I need to know what is going to happen to our current retirees that have already and anticipating retiring before 12/31/2022. Where are they at before we can even look past? We need an answer for them for right now. So what's going to happen to that group of people come 1/1/2023? Because anybody that's not retired after 1/1/2023 is probably going to fall in a whole nother boat. But I need to know what's going to happen to the boat that we already have, and we already call it pre and post 65 retirees. I'm just looking for county, but if the Board of Ed is going to be in on our post-65, I don't mind listening, but I need to know what's going to happen to the retiree boat.
So to answer your question, that's one of the reasons why I've asked them to come, because the Board of Ed has the option to do with their retirees, post-65, whatever they want to. They have that option to take them or keep them with us. They don't have the option, if I'm correct, with their pre-65s. They go to the state. So that's what I wanted to explain, a little bit of the difference between LEAs and local government, because that's not the requirement. And to answer your question, the county right now and the Board of Ed post-65s, they've qualified, or they will qualify in the county. They will be under our same insurance eligibility that we have now, pre-65s. Unless we change and decide, or not we, but the county commission, this recommended by this body, and the county commission decides to go to the state, then we'll address what we're going to do with pre-65s and post-65s. But right now, unless this committee and the county commission gives our office direction to do something different, we're with the present eligibilities that we have with Rutherford County. The post-65s, Board of Ed, and County General will be taken care of just like, because all that hasn't changed, that part hasn't changed. And they will, we will administer that group of people, the post-65s, Board of Ed, or County General, unless we're directed otherwise. Now, if the Board of Ed decides to take their own post-65s, come up with their own plan, do their own thing, they can if they want to, but right now, until we're given a different direction, we're staying with what we're doing. And we're administering it just like it was before. What does change is when the Board of Ed on their pre-65s, they have to go to the state. Our pre-65s will be treated the same because they're still under the eligibility that has been passed, recommended by this body and passed by the county commission. That will not change unless our department is given some direction, voted on, and a resolution is passed that will be changed. So I'm carrying forward other than the pre-65s from the Board of Ed. We'll get into eligibility a little bit further, but there was some, I asked Jessica to come because in the last meeting or so, we've had some questions gone back and forth, but they weren't here to represent themselves, and I thought we just needed to kind of bring everybody up to speed. And if you had any questions, let's ask the questions while they're here, especially retirement, anything like that. Eligibility questions, anything like that. They're here in front of us now, and instead of one of us trying to figure out an answer, we have them here, and they can answer what questions that you have as we look at the Board of Ed leaving and the county deciding on what they do, stay or go. Did I answer your question?
I was just going to say, too, I know everyone in this room has been very diligent and engaged in the process as we navigate the decision, and we all appreciate that, and we just want you to make the best guided decision that you can, but it's also not a rush. I know for budgeting purposes, you want to know what the premiums are going to be and what to budget and things like that, but as far as coming onto the state plan, we're in no rush. All we need is a 60-day notice. Now, you guys have over 1,000 employees, so the sooner the better, but again, if we need to come back to another meeting or...
Let me clarify that 60-day notice. All you need is a 60-day notice.
It might take us a little bit longer than 60 days.
It's not going to be that easy on our side, trying to uncouple and RFPs and everything else.
I get that, but on our end, there's time and there's some wiggle room, and no pressure from us is what I'm trying to convey.
What are the questions? Jessica? Any other questions? Tanya?
So since we're talking about the county side, just the county, the local government, as of 1/1/23, if we were to go, what would be the retirement eligibility for somebody who wished to retire, say, July 1, 2023? What would be the eligibility requirements for local gov?
As long as they are not Medicare eligible and they're under 65, they'll be able to apply depending on their years of service. I heard some of you mention at the last meeting where if you have 29 or less, 19 or less is 3 years of continuous insurance, and 29 or less, there is 1 year. We will waive that during the initial period because there's no way that you would have been able to obtain that service eligibility. You must have to be at least 55 years old, and you have to apply for your TCRS pension check. There's other eligibility requirements such as retiring before your active insurance ends. So everything else you will have to be met, but we'll waive that initial years of service on the insurance until 1 year has passed. So if you've had a chance to be on the insurance for 1 year, we'll then require it at that time.
What's the years of service again?
Yes, ma'am. If you have 20 or less, it's 3 years of continuous insurance. 29 or less, you need at least 1. If you have 30 years of service, you will still need the 1 year of continuous insurance, but please note that there's no age requirement once you hit the 30 years. The 55 is only for 29 or less.
Like for us right now, it's age 60, 20 years of service, and 10 years on the plan. But ours is not continuous service, it's cumulative. But you're saying continuous, so it would have to be 3 years of continuous service or 1 year continuous service, right?
Yes, ma'am.
But it'd be waived the first year is what I hear you say.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
And she was referring to coverage, not service. And then the minimum is 10 years, so I know we were saying under.
On local gov service.
And it needs to be with Rutherford County local gov.
Okay, so my question is, that's the requirement to have insurance with the state of Tennessee under the local program
Under the local gov side.
under the local gov side. Separate thought of how much is the local government going to contribute toward that?
Well, that's up, we leave that up to the agency.
Right.
So,
I guess that's where that was my point, is that we're 2 years down the road, and maybe for our plan, being eligible to have a contribution is different from being able to continue your health insurance under the state with no county contribution. And to me, that is two different thoughts. Eligible to retire, whether or not you're going to have contribution on behalf of, that the county taxpayer is going to make contribution.
Other questions? No other questions? Okay.
Okay, well,
Go ahead, Ed.
I wanted to touch on one thing. The earliest someone could retire from the state would be with 10 years of service. That would be the minimum that you would have is 10 years of service.
but they would also have to meet the other, be 55, yeah.
But I'm just talking about as far as years of service. And then I know you're saying that you're going to waive it, but it would be 3 years on the health plan.
Right, but because you're a new agency, that would be adjusted.
Right. So if they meet TCRS requirements and they have 10 years of service with the state, they could retire.
With Rutherford.
Well, Rutherford
Local
County,
gov, yes.
but I'm talking about, let's say, a year from now. They'd only be on the state for a year. But they would have 10 years with Rutherford County. They would be able to retire if they meet the other eligibility requirements.
That's right. That 1 to 3 year continuous coverage clause is waived because you're a new agency coming onto the plan and they didn't have the option to have the plan for the last 3 years or 1 year, depending on their years of service requirement.
And to make sure we clear up some confusion between county employees and Board of Ed, the state has a cutoff date of July 1, 2015, correct?
Or the local ed only, that does not apply to local government.
Right. And I'm just trying to, the calls and stuff that we've gotten, trying to, on TV where people can understand, where we have you here and we can get the facts right. So with local ed, July 1, 2015, if you were hired after that time, you do not have any health benefits.
Not from the state.
From the state.
So then the county can turn around and say, hey, you do not meet the eligibility requirements, we are going to offer you, whatever that may be. And we do not regulate any of that as long as it's geared towards a group that does not meet the eligibility requirements.
But on the local government, you do not have that stipulation. The July 1, 2015.
Correct.
And that's one of the differences when we're trying to talk about both of them and sort them out. That's one of the differences between the two. And
Again, it's only if you opt in to providing that retiree coverage. Because you could come onto the state plan for your active employees and do something completely different, whatever you so choose for your retirees.
correct.
365 even.
Right. And so, not that this is part of why you're here, and that's kind of what was to be discussed later, but I'll go ahead. Our eligibility and their eligibility doesn't match. What we have for Rutherford County's eligibility and their eligibility doesn't match. So you're going to have some employees that, we're on the Board of Ed especially, you're going to have the employees that we're going to have to figure out how we're going to change our language. Until the language change, we're going to administer it the way the county commission has approved it, or until the Board of Ed changes it. But our language is not going to match theirs. I mean, if you hear they're talking about 10 years of eligibility, and where ours can be 20 years of eligibility and 15 years on the plan. So we're going to have to, in the next several months, figure out how we're going to address it. Then you've got a gap with these people from 2010 to 2015, where ours cuts off and there's benefits at 2010, and theirs cuts off completely at 2015. The other issue you're going to have is if you have a Board of Ed employee that was close to our eligibility and would receive pharmacy, correct?
Well,
That would-
everyone will receive pharmacy
But-
beginning 2023, that's all.
But they don't meet the eligibility, our eligibility for the years of service or years on the plan, and now they've gone to a state plan. They can't be on the county plan unless they came back and worked somewhere with the county. So that's why this is the beginning of trying to figure out the language and trying to get the eligibility of what are we going to do for these people?
Sonia?
So I want to make sure I followed what you said just there. So if I heard you right, you were saying that as of 1/1/23, when the change is effective for the Board of Ed to go under the state plan, individuals who would not, and we're only talking Board of Ed, to be clear that I'm understanding what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. So at that point when they made the change, had they stayed with the county, they might have met the criteria to stay under the pre-65. Even if they were hired after 2010, they would have pre-65 to post. And then at post go to Medicare, right? But what you're saying is at the 2015, they won't meet the criteria under the state's plan, so trying to figure out so now that employee won't meet the criteria because they will not have been on our plan. Is that what you're saying?
Unless
Did I say
they're
that wrong?
grandfather them.
I think I confused myself.
I think what he's saying, we've got a gap. There's a cutoff with the state at 2015. So they don't get any retirement. They've been working with the county, so they've been working towards retirement. Now they have to go to the state, so now they can't meet our eligibility because they're not going to meet the years on the plan requirement. So we have a group of people with the Board of Education that no longer, they don't have an option right now. They don't have anything with the state, and they don't have anything with the county.
And they could actually be a pre-65, but by the time they came to post-65, they wouldn't meet our criteria.
Right, so anybody that was hired after 2010 may have met our criteria to have insurance pre-65, but now that they're on a different plan, they won't meet that. That's what you're saying, okay.
Go ahead, Lois.
Yeah, but did I understand you to say that?
Turn your mic on. Up.
So my question is, did I understand correctly that you said a new entity coming in, if they enroll within that first year, then no harm, no foul, they come on board?
So what we were saying is there's another requirement that a pre-65 retiree has to have 1 to 3 years continuous coverage on the plan. Well, they didn't have that option because you guys were not on the state plan, so that is adjusted for new agencies coming onto the plan as long as you weren't on and then left and came back, but you guys would be a brand new agency, so that would be adjusted.
So the 2015 rule still applies?
Well, it applies to the local ed. The local gov does not have that rule, but yes.
Right, but if we're talking, just so that we're all on the same page, trying to figure out what you did with the Board of Ed so we can then apply that same logic to the county. So I guess my next question is a little more convoluted, and Lisa, I'm going to look at you for this one. If we have to dig back into the changes that we made to eligibility for the retirees in order to manage our GASB numbers, we have to dig back into that and loosen up our eligibility to make sure that people are included, whether they go to the state or they stay, or the county stays with the county, whichever way they go. That going to increase our GASB liability? Have we thought about how we go about developing that so that we can give it to whoever develops that liability? Because I would assume it would make it go up, and then our savings could be eaten away significantly in a big hurry.
So on the Board of Ed, to me, where it adds to the liability is we made the cut as of 2010. So with the Board of Ed going to the state, they now have eligibility all the way up to 2015. So where we cut off at 2010, as far as what I call the golden buckets, we have there. So now that has opened up. So allowing them to come on under there, it is going to increase. But another component, if we choose to, and talk about if that's to stop the liability, if you draw the line in the sand and say, as effective this date, anybody hired after this date, there is none. There is no liability. When we went through it, and we tried to do that line in the sand to cut it off, and did not go well. But that is an option to reduce that liability, is to have that line in the sand and say anybody hired after this date, there is no contribution from the county for that. And I keep going back to that because if we're at the plan and they meet the eligibility to retire under the state's rules, but do they meet our eligibility to receive contribution toward that premium? So I would envision both ways, that you've got people who now would be eligible to retire under the plan, but the choice might be, okay, yeah, you can retire and you can pay 100% of that premium. The county's not going to contribute. On board?
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, so it opens up the gap of anybody that was hired after your current 2010 cutoff to 2015, our cutoff, to now have the option, as long as they meet all other eligibility requirements, to now have retirement insurance pre-65.
So where you go on your plan, I flip to the 10 years, that you have to have 10 years on the plan, whatever. And we say you have to have 15. Well, they can retire with 10 years on the plan and pay 100%. And we're saying that's fine. We want you to have 15 years before we contribute.
What was the question?
So in Lisa's example, that if somebody didn't meet their criteria and the employee could retire, take the insurance and pay 100%, does the state have the ability for us to have two options? One, you meet the criteria under the state, but it doesn't meet the county's criteria. So you could retire technically under the state's plan, but you have to pay 100%. Now, the next employee, employee B, meets the state's criteria and meets our criteria, and we're going to pay a portion of that. Would the county have the ability to have that flexibility?
Yes.
Okay.
You can contribute however, whatever bucket or regulations. We don't set any regulations. That's all set by you guys as to what you're going to contribute. Maybe to your point, they're going to pay 100% of them. As long as they qualify and meet the eligibility guidelines, they can come onto the plan, and it's up to you guys how much you're going to contribute. And to your point, it can be 3 different buckets. It can be 4 different buckets.
Right, so it's per employee, whatever the eligibility is by that employee, that's how we could apply what we're going to contribute to the premium.
Yeah, however you guys want to decide that. We leave it up to the agency.
A difference is with the state's requirement, you must be retired from TCRS.
Well, there's 2 different columns. So there's TCRS participants and non-TCRS participants, but I believe all the county employees are.
Are,
right?
yes.
So I think that would be a yes to
That's a yes. Okay, I just want to make sure, because somebody could.
That's the way I took it, it's a yes.
Somebody could be working for the county, have the benefit, choose not to retire yet from TCRS, but still want the insurance. Right, that's what I'm saying. But under the state plan, as I understand it, to get that benefit, they have to be retired from TCRS.
Yes, they just cannot, if they're on the TCRS, they just cannot have accepted the lump sum. But yes, there's a TCRS option and a TCRS option.
Okay, if you don't mind, let's go back to the 1 year that's going to be waived when they come on to the state plan. So if you don't meet state retirement eligibility and be able to catch that 1 year that's waived, you have to stay 3 years on the plan. So you'd have to work 2 more years. So if you had almost 29 years, you had 27, or you had whatever, but you were getting close. So you get your 1 year waived, and if you're not eligible to go in the 1 year waived, you have to work 2 more years to be in the 3 year. No matter years of service, once you hit your 20, now, I'm not talking 10 years, I'm talking about when you get up to the 20 or the 29.
The 3 years is only for employees that have 20 years or less years of service. It's always 1 year requirement for 20 and up, whether you have 27 years or 30 years. So when you join our state plan, we'll waive that because you had no way to obtain it, as Jessica said, but you still have to meet everything else. So even if you work 27 years and you had 3 years of sick time and you hit the 30-year mark, you still have to meet that 1 year, which will waive for the time being. But once that 1 year passes, you will have to have been on the plan for the 1 year to meet everything.
And I think too, you were kind of asking about like that second year, if they're on the cusp, so if there is no way possible for them to attain that 3 year, if they have the 10 years or whatever, and there's that 3 year, and you're saying maybe year 2, they meet all the other requirements, but they haven't met the third, are they going to have to work it? No, the answer is no, because you've only been on the plan for 2 years, so it's unattainable. That's only for new agencies and if you opt into the retiree coverage.
Any other questions?
Mine is in the weeds question.
Okay.
And if you just say, Lisa, that's too long.
Oh, no, well, if we don't know, we'll find out and follow up, no problem.
I guess on the school's behalf, I guess I've asked you, how is that managed? Do you bill us for the retirees? I mean, who's the responsible party to say, he don't make it? She does. So how does that billing go to TCRS and 100% on him, but only a portion on her, and then you bill us the rest? How does that work?
They're TCRS as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we cannot do split billing. So basically what we do is we'll bill TCRS for the premiums. If you are going to cover a portion, usually you'll have a separate agreement where you will reimburse the member because we bill through TCRS, or you can opt to have us bill your agency, and then you cover your portion and then get the money from the member. So we are flexible, but we just cannot do split billing. It's either all on TCRS or we bill you, and then you figure out how you want to work that with the employee.
So either I'm cutting a check, or the county bears the whole cost, right? Either it's all coming out of TCRS, and then I pay the retiree for the part we're going to contribute.
There is a way that we have where TCRS will work with you if you are providing a premium support, where you can just go ahead and pay your portion. So, and that's what you're asking. Okay, so I apologize. I thought you were asking on behalf of the member itself. But you can work with TCRS to go ahead and provide LEA support, and you'll fill out paperwork with TCRS where you send in your portion. Benefits Administration will still bill TCRS 100%, but then you pay what you're going to pay for the portion, and then whatever is left, the member will be responsible for, which will take it out of their TCRS check. So to make it easier, say the premium is $1,000. So we'll bill TCRS $1,000. You worked out a resolution where you're going to cover 75%. So you'll mail the payment for the $750, and then we'll take the $250 out of the member's TCRS pension check.
Any other questions? I think you did a good job, Jessica.
Correction, I apologize. Our retirement manager just said that the LEA, the support is not available for local gov, so I apologize. We cannot split it. Yes, ma'am.
So that's a check from the county to the retiree on the local side.
You want to read what she said?
Right, we'll either, it was the original, what I told you originally, we'll either bill you directly and you have to work it out, or we'll bill the member 100%, and then you will have to work it out with the member. So there's no way to have TCRS be in the middle. I mix it up with local ed, so.
Okay, still in the weeds? That's okay. Yeah, we'll find you. Any other questions? Thank you, ladies. Thank you all for coming today. Members were to eligibility retirement, or retirement eligibility. Item number 8.
Yes, sir, we covered most of that in just now.
We have any other questions on that? If not, we'll move on to the Mercer presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, gentlemen, when you come up, what I'd like for you to do is, you all are new faces, come on up. You're new faces to this committee, and explain where the old faces have gone and bring them up to date, and then you can make a presentation. Sure thing. All right.
And we also have Paul Huffman from Cigna, who is a familiar face, and he'll be available if we have any Cigna-specific questions. My name is Jack Wilkinson. I will be the producing consultant going forward to support all things Rutherford County. Very privileged to be here today, and we've got some numbers, and we're prepared to go as granular as we need. That's why David's on the line, and hopefully he can hear us. David is our granular financial analyst. So David, are you on the line to just do a brief introduction?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So I've been diving deep into the financials for this entire week, and got my head spinning, and then I've unspinned it, and then I've respinned my head. So I'm ready to deliver.
Great. Thanks, David. We also have Ross. Ross is an actuarial analyst who supports David on all the numbers piece, will help develop the rates. I believe you all did get the 11% proposed increase or projected increase document that we can walk through. But that's really where David and Ross, we can get as granular as you want today. And then also we have Jimmy McElhaney, who is here in Murfreesboro, and will be really the most local person to make sure anything that you all need done gets done, really supporting Ed and Jennifer. To what the mayor asked, the previous Mercer team left to go to another firm about 2 weeks ago. But luckily we are the largest risk manager in the world. We have a very deep bench. David, who is on the line, has familiarity with the county program and has been supporting it for the last 3 years, kind of behind the scenes. So it's not new to him. And with Ed and Jennifer's help, it's been a whirlwind 2 weeks, but we feel like the numbers we have today are a great starting point. And the focus today is really going to be on the health plan. The dental and vision will come at a later date, but so today is health plan, because that's obviously that's the driver of the majority of the budget. The dental and vision is not even a budget item at all for the county, with the employees funding the premium. So today is a health plan discussion. Anything else you want me to address before we kind of dive in?
No, carry on.
All right, thank you. So as I said, the projected increase is going to be 11%. There are a lot of assumptions that are being made. The two that we really want to call out to make, just to keep in the back of everyone's mind, is we've only got claims through March. So that's what took some time to develop what you have in front of you today, was that we needed the March claims. And on 1/1 of '22, the HSA plan was implemented and the local access network. So keep in mind, it's very immature data from the perspective of those two variables, which we think is extremely important to call out, because we're making some assumptions with trend, with inflation, and then how those two variables will impact claims for really the next 9 months as we roll into 2023. So the only thing we know with certainty is that, and the actuary team can speak to this, is that whatever we predict is going to be it's going to be a variable number from where we are today, but that's the beauty of the self-funded health plan, is that, as you all perform better, hopefully with some of these changes that were made, it'll improve the claim pick. So I think the last thing I'll speak to before I turn it over to David, at the current assumptions, and again, this is current assumptions, it's going to change after we get to next month's claims, we believe the delta from the current plan on the Cigna self-funded plan to the projected 23 state plan anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million. We can drill down more into how we develop that number, but just know that is a moving target. So that is something that's literally evolving. It's going to evolve every month. But that is where we believe it to be today. But I'll let David kind of take over, and Ross, and just do a high level. I mean, you want him to do a quick walkthrough of the document and then open up for Q&A? All right, perfect. So with that, David, and the sound was good. Was it sufficient sound?
It is.
Okay. All right, David?
All righty, so y'all can hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All righty, so yeah, we can just walk through the document, the contribution spreadsheet to start. Y'all have seen this before. I think most of you have, at least, the same format and template. On your left side is the OAP network, so the broad network, and the contributions and total rates. And then on the right side is going to be your local plus network and the corresponding decremented rates. So we have, I added this, and I hope it's helpful, but this will hopefully help us navigate the spreadsheet. At the very top, you'll see the columns are lettered, and so I'll try to refer to those letters. That way it's easy to pick out what I'm saying. So in column E, you just see you have the total premium rates for 2023, and those are 11% above the rates that are in column F, which is 2022. The contributions and contribution percentages were assumed to stay the same. And what that means is that your contributions are going to be increased. Your employee and employer contributions are both increased by that same 11%. And then you'll see what does that look like in column H is what does that look like in terms of dollars? What's the dollar change? And so just for illustration purposes, you have the copay plan, employee only contribution is going up by $9.02. And then you'll see the corresponding increase to the employer. And then columns J and K are the total contribution for 2023 with the wellness reduction and without the wellness reduction. Column L is going to show you the total 2023 Rutherford County contribution. And then we'll just go over to the Local Plus real quick. Local Plus, you have the 2023 Local Plus total rate. There's a 4% decrement difference in the total OAP rate versus the Local Plus network rate. The total LCP savings is the total dollar difference between the OAP rate, broad network rate, and the Local Plus rate. What column P is. It is assumed in this exhibit that that dollar savings, so again, for illustration purposes, the copay plan, the employee only tier, has a total Local Plus savings of $36.42. That savings is split 50-50 between the employer and the employee. So half of that is used to reduce the employee rate, half of it is used to reduce the employer rate. Column Q is going to be the Local Plus contribution with wellness. So that's the actual dollar amount that they will pay in 2023. Column R is the dollar change from the prior year. And then what is the total annual employee savings if they choose the Local Plus network? That's column S. And then I'm just going to skip over to column U. And U is the employer Local Plus total contribution for 2023. And V is the dollar savings, which you can see are the same as the employee because it's split 50-50. And then just scrolling down to the retiree section, all a similar layout. So similar thing. It's just going to have your copay pre-65 retiree plan, your deductible pre-65 retiree plan, and then that freedom choice. Type in, and then down below is the new Cigna Medicare Advantage PPO. And those rates, so in column E on the Cigna Medicare Advantage PPO section, those rates are fully insured rates, meaning that is what you pay, period.
David, we have a quick question.
Sure.
David, looking at the Local Plus chart that you have here, anywhere in that section, does it tell me what my copay, just choosing one, employee only, does it tell me what he's paying in 22 and then what he would pay in 23 with this increase, or have I overlooked that?
It shows you what they're paying in 23 and then the dollar change. So the two together is, or rather one less the other is what they were paying in 2022. So column Q less column R is what they paid in 2022. So column R shows what is the dollar change from 2022 to 2023.
Okay, so they're still seeing, like that one would see a $7.22 increase over his current year. So that's what that is.
The $7.22 is so column Q is the 2023 contribution. The column R is how much did it change from the prior year. So you don't add the 722 to the 7285. It's already been added. If that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries. So that's kind of the lay of the land in terms of how all this works. Like Jack said, this is a very assumption-heavy projection. When you have a 1,200 life, or when you have 3/4 of a population leave, the larger population is not really indicative of the new population. So there's definitely assumptions that have to be made. Of course, economic inflation right now is at 8.5%. So how that's going to affect it, we certainly know it's going to affect medical trend a lot. So there are assumptions that have to be put in for that.
Lois.
Hi, David. This is Lois Miller. I have a question regarding the loss of economies of scale. For this 11% increase, what portion?
Sorry, you went out there at the last second.
Hold the mic a little closer.
What portion of this 11% increase is attributable to the loss of economies of scale?
That is a great question. We didn't really.
We got an answer.
We didn't look at the. Say it again.
This is Paul. So what David has done is looked at the actual claims of the 1,200 that are remaining and projected forward, just like Cigna did. Where economies of scale comes into place is just on the fixed costs. So that is a very small number. And David, if I don't have that calculation in front of me, but the ASO fee is only going up $6. So that's the impact, $6 per employee per month, roughly.
The $6 represents 25% on the ASO fee. I know it's a small, the overall ASO fees are small.
Could be, yes,
Percentage of the
but as a
total.
percentage of the whole, it's really small.
And then the stop-loss rate rose.
The stop-loss rate wasn't due primarily to the economies of scale, but more the difference in the pooling point that had to be quoted
Correct.
because the
And
group is smaller.
I'm figuring that in. If we had to
Yeah.
increase the fees because of the lower population, we had to drop the pooling point because of the lower population, the stop-loss premiums went way up. I'm just trying to
Correct.
calculate what those fixed costs, those additional fixed costs are as a percentage of this 11%.
Yeah, that can easily be calculated, so we can take that away if we need to.
And I mean, and that's something I know David has in the master spreadsheet, and we can distribute that via Ed and Jennifer, so you can see, because to your point, you all lowered your retention, right, the spec level, and obviously that increases your fixed cost via premium. So we can give you the exact numbers, and it's factored into the big spreadsheet that was a little busy for the meeting today. Ross, anything to add from that component?
Yeah, just to touch base on the 11%. We're using data through March 2021, so we'll be trending experience all the way to 2023. So it's roughly 20 months of trend that we're including with 5.5% for medical and 9% for prescription drugs. That attributes to a lot of the 11%.
Okay, I have another question or maybe a general statement. So back with Lois and Paul's discussion and the 11%, what Lois and Paul, and help me, we're talking about is part of the 11% increase. And based on the chart that I'm seeing in front of me, if all stays the same of the 80%, 20% contributions and everything, a co-pay individual person would pay, it's going to only go up $9.02 a month from what they're currently paying.
That's correct.
Okay, so 11% sounds like a lot. And if you're not a high-paid employee, it can be a lot. But let's just think about the potential disruption if change is made by going to the state plan because we've got numbers for a deductible plan, but I'm thinking that went away. So at the most, a person with a family would go up at the most $52.34, because I'm looking strictly at the open access plan, because that's the richest. I mean, that's the cream of the crop right there. And we're thinking 11%, and 11% sounds like a lot, but is 11% on a dollar, is it 11% on $1 million? It makes a difference. So for the record and out loud and on television, at the most, it would only affect the employee's pocketbook at 11% increase of $52.34 a month. And the biggest part of County General, I'm assuming, still does a split. Like 52 won't come out at one time, it's the 52.34 is split now. But technically, so for those listening, 11% sounds like a lot, but it also is carrying what Lois and Paul was discussing, correct? That's all in that 11%. And so at the most, to hurt somebody's pocketbook is only going to be $52.34 for the cream of the crop plan to cover an employee plus an entire family. To me, that would be an investment as to not have huge disruption at this time.
Other comments, questions? I don't see any.
I think it's also worth noting that we do have only, like Jack had said earlier, we do have only 3 months of there were substantial plan design changes made, especially to moving from the HRA to the HSA. There were plan changes made for both of the plans as well. And so those plan design changes, of course, we can speculate on what, that will result in, but, consumerism is a big part of it, how that affects the way that people spend and all those things. It takes time. You need experience. You need claims. So the corresponding decrement is going to increasingly come to light as we get more and more claims. So again, the 11% it could be more, it could be less, but there's a likely range of variability. But 11% is what we have, is what we're coming up with right now, and we have labored over the calculation for quite some time.
I have a question. So one of the things we talked about in going forward was if we did reduce the population, we might have to consider eliminating the clinics. That's about a $2 million cost. So has there been any discussion about what's going to happen with the clinics? And then the other thing that we talked about that we were going to ask the actuarials to take a look at is at one point we did a spousal carve out because our spouses were costing us more money in claims than the employees were. And so that was a conscious decision that we made in order to try to take better care of the employees that were left. So one of the conversations we had as we were moving to this was, do we need to look at the possibility of allowing spouses back on, in part because collecting family premiums also increases the pool. So I know as well it increases the risk, but I'm just curious, have you looked at those two things? Has that been any part of this conversation as we look at these rates?
Absolutely. And then, David, I think you're going to comment on how the rates were embedded with the clinic was assumed at $500,000. That's included in the rates. And the spouses, Dave, is that number 391?
The spousal, the amount to add spouses, those additional spouses is $315,000.
Say it again.
$315,000.
$315,000. So that's already included in the 11% calculation. That's allowing the spouses back on. That was an assumption that was made. We had to make an assumption on how many would take it. The clinic we embedded in the rates was $500,000 in expense for the clinics. Versus it's because it's a lower population.
Right, so we've got 3 clinics, so that's maybe keeping 1 clinic is what you're thinking.
Right, and I know that's something that's still being ironed out in terms of the clinic piece, but as of today, this does include $500,000 in spend to reflect the expense associated with the clinic.
Okay, so with that being said, and since the deductible plan is shown here with cost, is that assuming that the deductible, because technically they're paying for themselves because of how we have moved rates accordingly. So that's even potentially leaving that option open for the ones that are on it, which is a total of 34 that are on that deductible plan.
Yes, that's assuming that the deductible plan does change, because the deductible plan is funded appropriately. So the deductible plan claims are considerably higher than the other 2 plans. And so they are appropriately funding themselves. And my personal recommendation versus recommendation would be to keep the deductible plan and let it just sunset over time, because there's going to no doubt be a decrement in claims when someone moves from the deductible plan to the other plans, which is almost certainly going to be the copay plan. We would assume that people would move from the deductible to the copay. So there's certainly a claims decrement, but there will also be a funding decrement. So funding decrement outweighs the claims decrement at the moment. So it's to Rutherford County's advantage to keep that deductible plan. And as long as employees find it valuable and worth taking on that plan, then we would recommend that you keep that plan. Does that make sense? Because there's not really any additional administrative burden associated with it. It's kind of no harm, no foul. So our recommendation would be just to keep it and let it slowly dwindle.
Okay, that sounds good. And since I made the point of, I took it out a minute ago, so worst case scenario for 11% increase for only 4 people in the entire county,
that has that remaining, it's only going to,
At most.
at most, it will go up $86.29. I realize that's a lot, and you can't say at least, but 11% is only $86.29, and this group of people have paid for their deductible plan according to the premiums over the last few years adjusted to cover them instead of, so they're actually paying for themselves. Okay, thank you.
And David, if the deductible plan went away, could you kind of give them a little bit of the range that we're talking about, that it would change that 11% to, what was it, 12 and a half maybe?
To about 13 and a half, yeah.
13, okay.
So about a 2.5 point swing.
And what has happened in the past is that people just migrate, either they leave the county or they migrate to another plan from time to time. And I think when I came in here, it was, I think 200 and something people were on there like 3 years ago, and now we're down to what, 34?
Correct.
So it's kind of doing away with itself. And since this year, it's paying for itself.
Right. Because it's paying for itself, there's incentive just to keep it. Right.
I have a follow-up question on that. So help me understand exactly how it's paying for itself, because in that same example that Mary just gave, it's showing the increase in the employer contribution is $345.18. If the employer contribution's gone up, how is it that it's paying for itself?
It's going up as the 11%. So it's funding itself. So when you look at the total premium rates in column E, those are the rates needed to fund the plan appropriately. And so when we look at their claims and we compare them to their the premium that is generated, it's an 11% increase will give you total premium rates for 2023 that appropriately fund that plan, appropriately budget for that plan.
And in theory, if that plan does go away completely, those 34 will migrate to another plan and be funding less out of their paychecks, and that's less that you can use to offset claims.
Correct.
Sonia.
So if, and I want to make sure that I've not miscalculated or looked at this incorrectly, but if I'm looking at the enrollment in each option based on employee all the way up to family, and then I look at the potential premium increases for the employee. Now, obviously, it's different for the employer, but it looks like when I calculated that 993 of the employees would be paying $20 or less for a premium increase is what it looks like, anywhere from $9 and some change. Now, 902. And then you would have, a 275. If you look down in the HSAs, a 275 increase, 1153, 1016. So if I added all those up, that looks like 993 of our employees would pay $20 or less of an increase on their premiums based on this, and it would leave 480 at $20 or more, depending on which plan they chose. Obviously, that's going to be different for the county's portion because 11% of the remaining percent is higher. Am I analyzing what you've presented correctly?
David, I mean, I'm trying to do back of the napkin math kind of in real time, and that's how I would ballpark it. But David, can you speak to that more specifically?
Sure. And what percentage did you say that it was? What percentage of employees?
So basically, I've just taken the enrollment columns. Right. I've taken the enrollment columns for each option, and I've looked to see what the increase in the employee contribution is. And when I do that and add up the amounts, it looks like it ends up being 993 of our employees, because all of the HSA on both options is less than $20. So that's 192 employees and 501 employees, okay? So there's 700 right there, and then taking the others. So I'm just saying, if we're looking at the cost to the employee for the 11%, trying to go back to that 11% increase for the employee, what will it mean on their paycheck? It appears as though the majority of the employees would pay less than $20 a month.
additional. So I'm seeing what you're saying. So on the total column, I'm seeing there is the employee-only tier in the copay plan that's paying less than $20. There's all 4 tiers of the HSA plan that's paying less than a $20 increase. And so when I add up the $349 and the 501, I get to $850. And I just want to make sure I'm not missing any other numbers. So $850. Do you see that? We have so 501. If you look at the annual total enrollment in column C for the HSA plan, it's 501 people. And I know that all of those tiers are paying less than a $20 increase, 501. And then I can see the 349 of the employee-only copay plan is also paying less than a $20 increase. And when I add those two, I get $850.
Plus the
51 of the other Local Plus copay plan.
that's where I was. Yeah, the Local Plus.
So when you add the other 51 in, it gets you to the $993.
Correct.
The total enrollment includes the Local Plus and the OAP enrollment. But your point still stands where 850 employees of the total 1193 is still 71%.
Yes.
Of employees are receiving, of your active employees are receiving less than a 20% increase. So your point still stands.
Other questions for Jack? David? Sorry, couldn't see. Doug?
Thank you. This might be a question for Paul. On the very bottom of this, and I know this is a comparison for the county side, but traditionally I've seen where the post-65 BOE retirees are on the bottom there with this on this first page under the post-65 premiums, where it says at the very bottom, Cigna Medicare Advantage PPO, the total premium for $204.75 for both the retiree and the county, that is the premium amount that was bid, including our BOE retirees, correct?
It is, and as you recall, it did not change whether it's county only or the entire group. But the assumption is that the whole entire group is Medicare Advantage PPO, and it's the same rate, the $204.75.
That, when I was looking at that, and once again, I know that this is for the county side comparison. And like I said, typically when we get the rates numbers, we see in that total enrollment column for the retirees, we see the BOE retiree number as well put in there. It's just got the 103 for the county. I just want to, because we're on TV, I just want to say the BOE, they have always wanted our post-65 that are currently on, the post-65 insurance for the county, even as they went to the state. They will be under this Medicare Advantage plan come January 1, 2023. I just wanted to make sure if anybody was looking at that, I wanted to make sure that that was reiterated, that our BOE retirees post-65 that are currently retired will be on this plan. And for budget purposes, if you guys could get me a number for BOE enrollees. Like, once again, I understand this is typically see those numbers for the BOE retirees in there. Thank you.
Yes, and this just shows a 50-50 split, that we still will have the 25, the 50, yes, so I'll get you those for that, yeah.
Other questions? Jack, David, Ross, Jimmy, thank you all for coming today. Appreciate you. I have a question. Jessica, you're still here. Would you mind coming back up just very quickly? So, when we met with you a month or so, maybe 2 months ago, Director Lee, Lori Lee came, and she said that you would have better numbers. And of course, this week the General Assembly is adjourned and signing died for the session. Do you have better numbers of what your rates are going to be looking at?
Well, I wish I had more insight to share. Unfortunately, I don't today, but we will as of our May Insurance Committee meeting. It's May the 26th at 1 p.m.
Okay, okay. So we will be meeting on the 26th at that point in time. So I think what this committee would like to see, but more so the county commission, needs to see what we heard here today. And we're looking at 11% that would have to figure it into the budget as we move towards our setting of our tax rate on the 27th of June. But also what would be the cost and the coverages. You see, the commission would like to see what is the cost if we went with the BOE and came to the state, and what are those coverages?
Yeah, absolutely. We can build a comparison so you guys can see side by side based on what you just saw at an 11% increase on your current county plans, and then what you would see. The only thing that we would have to kind of predict and guess at is who is currently on the county plan, what PPO plan or HSA plan they may choose on the state. Since we have 4 plan options, we have 3 PPO plans and a high deductible HSA plan. So we just don't know how the members will migrate, but we can put together based on, current enrollment numbers and do the best we can. And at least you would have your 2023 premium so you could see side by side exactly.
Yeah, and I think, because anytime you do these comparisons, you have to make some kind of assumptions. I think the best assumption is for the migration to look like what the state's present migration is. And if you would use the plans for that percentage of your enrollments in each one, I think that would get us pretty close. And even if the migration the first year is not that, as you hire new employees, as you get 2 or 3 years down the road, I would anticipate that migration would have a closer look to what the state's migration is, to give us a truer picture. I know you have to make some kind of assumption, so to try to give you some guidance, that's what I would do, is just plug in the same percentages of what enrollments you have in each plan too.
But at least by May 15th, you should have this month's data, April's data, to help you make those determinations.
Yes, and definitely we'll have official rate increase numbers on May 26th at the 1 p.m. meeting.
Okay.
Can you give us an idea of what your trend is right now for the last 12 months?
Yeah, I have the trend numbers. I can send you email and you can share them with the committee.
Yeah, we can distribute once we get that information. Mary?
Okay, so just for simple purposes, what she's coming back next month with will show us our 913 that are in the open access and whatever the remaining difference of that is in the local plus. Because I realize, and the big thing that the state, when they put it out a long time ago, is they got 90% in the local access or the smaller network. We're not that way. I want to see our apples to apples. Our 913 people, I don't assume they're going somewhere else because they didn't this year. So, when we offered them the local act, they didn't go this year. So I need to know what true. If basically what I want to know is where are they going to be at if you actually looked at the price today? If we were on the state plan today and everybody stayed either open access or local plus where our numbers are today, we can't assume that everybody's going to migrate because they didn't. And we got nowhere near 90% going over. So I would like to see what 280 of our local plus participants, what would they look like, and then our 913 on open access. Because I know you need to assume, but the assumption of 90% going to a local, and I do say that is based on pricing, but we can't look at that based on pricing right now because you're not comparing what we have now to what is going to be. So I just really think that the numbers need to reflect exactly where we're sitting at today.
So would you also like for that to show the surcharge for the employee if they're not in the local plus network?
Yes, I want to know I want it to know what Mary Hickerson, because I have open access.
I would like to know what Mary Hickerson's price is going to be, because I'm going to make the assumption, I didn't go Local Plus, so more than likely, I'm going to stay on open access, whether it be on our county plan or heaven forbid the state plan. That's just my doctors and my hospital. That's what I have to do. So we need to assume where is everybody at today is where I want the numbers to look like. We don't need to assume because 90% didn't go.
Lisa.
So I say yes, and I agree with Ed, and I think the answer is going to be somewhere in between. That, yes, I would like to see apples to apples where they are, and if there's a surcharge because of the local.
You decide not to be in the Local Plus.
Well, I just want to know what the rates are. I'd like to see what our population is today compared to what it would be with the new rates, where they are. But I'd also like to see a separate analysis of the rates with how the distribution is with all the people in that local government pot. Where are they distributed? Because I do agree, if you went and there's more options, people are not going to stay, they may or may not stay. So I don't think, as you said, in that first year, they're all going to be just like the state. I don't necessarily know they're going to exactly stay where they are either. So that's why I say between the two might be the answer somewhere. At least it gives you a gist of where it is.
I agree. And to your point, though, people may have not migrated from your Cigna Local Plus to the open access or vice versa because you just opened up the Local Plus. But there's also another layer in there, right? Because we also offer Blue Cross Blue Shield. So someone who didn't take the local network of Cigna may now take the more narrow Blue Cross Blue Shield network because they realize that their doctors, their hospitals are in that network. So I think everybody is it's an assumption, it's a guess, but it's a good starting point. Maybe we do two comparisons. One, like the people that are on open access paying the surcharge now, a comparison, and then what it kind of looks like. Because the only difference is, I think you're right, just historically trend-wise, Rutherford County will probably fall in line with our averages. Right off the bat, probably not. Your HSA is very well funded, and that's atypical of what we see. Not every county is as well funded as you, so you're probably going to have more HSA participants right off the bat than what our average is on the state plan now for local gov.
And can you share with them what your average is with the HSA?
Yes. So right now, in the local gov plan, we have 39% of our members are on the Premier PPO plan, 17% are on the Standard plan, 38% are on the Limited plan, and then 5% are on the HSA plan. And because, your HSA is well funded, it's probably going to be a little higher than that 5%, but it's a good starting point and it's all kind of a guess. But I think it would be beneficial maybe to see both. We'll run it in line with what our current plan percentages are, and then we'll do a side-by-side. But again, it's still going to make the assumption that your copay plan is closest to our Premier PPO plan is what we've kind of all agreed upon, but still it's not the same exact plan, but we can run the numbers that way and then run the surcharge for the open access network.
And not to confuse things, but the LEAs, their percentages are different than that. And so when some comparisons that you've seen when we were talking about with the schools, it's a different number than these percentages here. What they enroll in as far as the LEAs is different from they have a higher enrollment in your Premier plan.
Yes, they have 64% on the Premier plan.
Yeah, where with local government it's 30 what?
39.
39.
Tanya.
I just want to make sure, because we were talking about the surcharge, since we talked about it, what does that mean to an employee? Can you kind of explain it? So they have their premium plus, is that they have their monthly premium, and let's just say their monthly premium is, $52. And so on top of that $52 is a surcharge, and what's the surcharge for?
It's for a more broad network, so more doctors, more options, more choice. So it's a higher fee because we have better negotiated rates for that local, smaller network, agreed upon, like contract rates and things like that. So it's $65 extra, but it's a total premium. So the employee wouldn't see like an extra charge. It would just all kind of be wrapped, how you guys charge them out of their check.
So it's kind of, you don't have something that you're calling local access and open access. You're just calling it local and then adding a surcharge to make it open.
No, we have the same. So we have the Cigna Open Access Network and the Local Plus Network, and then we have a Blue Cross S&P. And so both of our carriers have that limited network. That's the premium that you're quoted at level 1. Then there's that surcharge for the Open Access Network and the more broad network, but it's just a difference of $65 if it's employee only or employee plus child. Employee plus spouse and the family tier is a little bit higher than that.
65 a month or a year?
Yes, a month.
So,
Double.
I hear you. I hear what you're saying now. So even if it was, we'll say it's the Local Plus. So on the Local Plus, you might pay $65 extra to have more. I'm
No.
sorry, I've lost you on that one part because I heard you.
You've got it backwards.
I've got it backwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you know in the chart you just saw where they quoted on the left-hand side and the
Right.
right-hand side, so you
Right.
have your open access
Right.
pricing and then you have your local network premium prices.
Local is little local.
Yeah.
Open access.
Well, but what I thought I heard her
if you want
say-
all the doctors, you're going to pay $65.
Whatever, yeah.
And-
Okay, I heard you right the first time.
Well,
I
there's two amounts on your surcharge. Will you go over the second part of it?
Yes. So if you want the bigger network, more doctors, more choices, which of course should also note that we have tools where you can just easily plug in your doctor or your hospital to see, what's in which network. But if the employee decides to go with the more broad network, a lot of it is an educational piece. Not saying you didn't do your due diligence or whatever, but people just sometimes don't realize that all their doctors and their specialists are in the more local network, which is why we see 90% of members choose that. But if they wanted the broad option, that of course is an option, and it's $65 surcharge for employee only or employee plus child. Now the other two tiers, employee plus spouse or employee family, is $130 for 2022.
And in our Cigna Local Plus network, HTA is not in that. Are they in yours?
They are not.
So, yeah, I just wanted to make sure it pretty much the same.
So I think this is how ours is too. So say I had a kid that my son's going to be going to college in a couple of years. So if he went to college and he was somewhere not in the Local Access Plus, obviously, because, well, I shouldn't say obviously, if he went away, if he studied MTSU, he'd be on the plan. But if he was somewhere out of Tennessee or somewhere out of our access, how does that work for those type situations? Would an employee need to be on the Open Access Plus then to make sure their child is covered in the event that there was a situation while they were away at school, or would they be covered just because it was an emergency, or how would that work?
It just depends on like if they're in state or out of state and what hospitals are in the more narrow or the broad network. There's special regulations for each carrier when you go out of state or if you have an emergency. So there's different stipulations if you don't have access to get to someone right away, depending on the situation.
Mary.
Actually, this question is for Paul, and you may not know the exact answer, Paul, but our Local Plus through Cigna, is it pretty much mirrored the state's Cigna Local Plus? Does it kind of mirror ours on like an HCA or a no HCA?
Yes, it does. They're
Okay.
using the same Local Plus network that you're using. And to answer Sonia's question, for out-of-state Cigna Local Plus, you can still enroll in Local Plus, knowing that you have a student that might travel or move. They're still covered. And if they go into a city where we have a Local Plus network, they would use that. If they don't, they're covered by the Open Access Plus. It wraps. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner.
This has come up a couple of different times about the fact that the state has a fund where they've been supplementing premiums and kind of suppressing those rates. They might otherwise be inflated a little bit higher. Can you talk about that a little bit? Or I know you said your rates for this year aren't set, so there's been some conversation about the fact that the state will eventually, fairly soon, not be doing that any longer. Do you have any information to share about that?
Yes. So basically what we do at the state is we have that accrual fund that you mentioned, and then anything that's top line overfunded, we take that and reinvest to keep the premiums lower or as low as possible. There are other things that factor into that, like pharmacy rebates and things like that. Anything that we get back, we always take it and try to reinvest it in the premiums. Now, as far as we've done that in the past, to keep, the local gov plan last year had an average aggregate increase of 4.4. So that's how we were able to keep it lower, because healthcare inflation, everything was much higher than 4%, but we were able to then turn around and take some of those top level funds, some of the rebates, and then reinvest it to keep the premiums low. Now, we know with COVID, it's been a rough year, and we know with, just the way healthcare is functioning right now, it's been a tough go. We don't know what that's going to look like for 2023, but we will, as of May 26th, what that looks like. Now, the local gov plan, we talked about spending down some of the reserves. So last year we did, and the local insurance committee knew that we were spending some of that down. But the plan is very financially solvent, so we don't have any concerns about that, but we also don't have any real insight onto 2023, what that's going to be yet, but we will.
Other questions? Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Anything else to come before us today? Members, mark down May 26, 1 o'clock, 2022, be our next meeting. Nothing else for the order. We'll stand adjourned.